Bom dia a todos e a todas, sejam muito bem-vindos. Vamos iniciar nesse momento a cerimônia de abertura do Congresso em Esportes de Raquetes, evento organizado pela Faculdade de Ciências Aplicadas e pela Faculdade de Educação Física, ambas faculdades pertencentes à Universidade de Campinas, Unicamp. Eu sou a Thaisa Belli, presidente do evento, e gostaria de convidar inicialmente o professor Márcio Torsoni, diretor associado da Faculdade de Ciências Aplicadas da Unicamp, para a sua fala. Bom dia, professor Márcio.
Bom dia, Thaisa. Bom dia a todos os inscritos no evento, né? Eu queria já inicialmente agradecer o convite para estar aqui. Estou muito feliz pelo êxito na organização desse evento, que você está como presidente da comissão organizadora. Cumprimento o professor Orival, o diretor da Faculdade de Educação Física da Unicamp. Cumprimento o professor Milton, também professor da Faculdade de Ciências Aplicadas, representando outros membros organizadores do evento e também da comissão científica. Seria muito bom, né, que esse evento pudesse estar acontecendo ou na FEF ou na FCA, né, um evento presencial. Isso movimentaria muito as nossas unidades, né, e possibilitaria o encontro das pessoas nesse momento, né, as pessoas que trabalham, que fazem ciência em esportes de raquete, que têm ou que praticam e gostaria de conhecer um pouco mais sobre o esporte de raquete, mas a gente está num momento difícil e é isso que a gente pode fazer. A gente tem que olhar um evento remoto, assim, virtual, do jeito que está acontecendo, tirando as coisas boas. Provavelmente, eu não sei quais são os inscritos, a quantidade de inscritos para o evento, mas eu imagino que o alcance é muito maior, né? Pessoas que talvez são distantes do país, eles não poderiam se mover até São Paulo para um evento na Unicamp e estão tendo acesso a esse evento, né? Vejo também que é um congresso internacional, que a gente tem convidados da Espanha, da República Dominicana, da Alemanha, que eu pude acessar o site e olhar, então eu fico bem feliz. Desde já eu dou parabéns a você, Thaisa. Agradeço o seu empenho junto a nós na FCA. Dou os parabéns a toda a comissão organizadora pela realização desse evento. Espero que nesses 2 dias, esse sábado e domingo, seja muito proveitoso, tanto para aqueles que estão ministrando palestra, apresentando trabalhos, como para aqueles que estão apenas assistindo o evento, tá bom? Então, agradeço e dou já de antemão os parabéns pelo evento.
Muito obrigado, Márcio, pelas suas palavras, pela sua presença aqui conosco. E nesse momento, então, eu gostaria de convidar o professor Dr. Orival Andres Júnior, diretor da Faculdade de Educação Física da Unicamp, para a sua fala, então. Bom dia, professor Orival.
Olá, bom dia, Thaisa, bom dia, Márcio, bom dia a todos. É um prazer muito grande estar aqui com vocês, num sábado, onde estamos procurando aí aprender e conhecer cada vez mais a nossa área. Poder estar participando aqui nesse evento, aí, nesse Congresso de Esporte de Raquete, é uma honra muito grande para a FEF e para a Unicamp, com toda certeza. Então, eu gostaria aí de parabenizar toda a organização, a Thaisa aí, que está à frente de todo o trabalho, que transmita o nosso carinho, nosso abraço, mesmo que distante, a todo o pessoal da organização. A gente sabe que não é difícil, o quanto é difícil organizar um evento, principalmente nesse momento em que estamos vivendo. Vocês foram bastante persistentes e estão aí desenvolvendo um trabalho muito bom para a área da educação física. Parabéns aí, Márcio, um abraço para você, um abraço a todo o pessoal da FCA, todo o pessoal da FEF. Eu acho que junto a gente pode ser muito mais forte, tanto a Faculdade de Educação Física quanto a Faculdade de Esportes aí, né? Acho que a gente tem que se juntar para poder passar esse momento difícil. Nós sabemos que a nossa área, a área de atividade física, esporte, exercício físico, é o que vai dar suporte para as pessoas conseguirem amenizar um pouquinho tudo que está acontecendo. Então, aí, parabéns para vocês, tenham um evento aí com bastante proveito e estudos que possam nos elevar diante da sociedade. Um abraço aí a todos, obrigado, Thaisa, e obrigado a todos.
Muito obrigado, professor Orival, pela sua presença aqui conosco, pelas suas palavras. Eu gostaria, então, de fazer algumas palavras finais, como fechamento dessa cerimônia de abertura do Congresso, contar um pouco para vocês que esse Congresso em Esportes de Raquetes nasce depois de 3 edições do Simpósio em Esportes de Raquetes, que era organizado na FCA por nosso grupo de pesquisa, o Grupo Interdisciplinar de Pesquisa em Esportes de Raquetes, desde 2017, e nasce principalmente por meio de uma parceria com pesquisadores e instituições brasileiras ligadas aos esportes de raquetes. Então, dessa forma, além da FCA e da FEF, como instituições organizadoras, eu gostaria de agradecer imensamente o apoio e a parceria da Confederação Brasileira de Tênis de Mesa, da Confederação Brasileira de Badminton, do Departamento de Capacitação da Confederação Brasileira de Tênis, da Federação Paulista de Tênis, da Federação Paranaense de Tênis, Federação Paulista de Squash, da Special Olympics, da Universidade Federal do Rio Grande do Sul, da Escola Superior de Educação Física de Jundiaí, da Universidade Fivale, da Universidade da Cidade de São Paulo, da Universidade Aberta da Terceira Idade, da Universidade do Vale do São Francisco e também do projeto Badminton em Rede. E vocês que estão nos assistindo vão conhecer melhor todos esses pesquisadores que compõem essas instituições que eu mencionei há pouco, esses pesquisadores e pesquisadoras que foram grandes parceiros ao longo de toda a programação do evento. Minha gratidão enorme a cada um de vocês. Como o Márcio mencionou na fala dele há pouco, de fato, esse evento estava planejado inicialmente para acontecer em setembro de 2020 e de maneira presencial. No entanto, por conta da pandemia que estamos vivendo, a data foi prorrogada agora para abril e com o evento acontecendo de maneira online. E se por um lado, né, a gente perdeu a possibilidade de nos encontrarmos presencialmente, de ter as trocas que acontecem num congresso no modelo presencial, os momentos práticos que estavam previstos também para acontecer nesse congresso em esportes de raquetes, se tivemos essa perda por um lado, por outro lado, de fato, alcançamos uma comunidade muito maior do que as nossas expectativas iniciais. E totalizamos aqui, ontem, 1.400 inscritos no Congresso, tanto brasileiros como também participantes de fora do Brasil, o que nos deixa imensamente felizes. Tivemos ainda 31 trabalhos aprovados, que serão apresentados no Congresso em forma de tema livre ou de pôster, e trabalhos esses também que estão concorrendo às menções honrosas que serão entregues ao final do evento. Agradeço muito a cada um de vocês que está aqui hoje enquanto nosso participante do evento, ou mesmo enquanto autor, coautor dos trabalhos que serão apresentados. Desejo, por fim, que o Congresso seja muito frutífero, tanto para reunir a comunidade que atua com as modalidades de raquetes, como também para promover cada vez mais o desenvolvimento de pesquisas científicas que sejam aplicadas e que alcancem cada vez mais aqueles que estão diariamente junto às mesas e às quadras de cada modalidade de esportes de raquetes, podendo fornecer para vocês um dos pilares para a atuação profissional de vocês. Por fim, então, encerrando essa cerimônia de abertura, eu desejo um excelente congresso a todos e a todas. E peço a vocês que aguardem um pouquinho na programação, que na sequência a gente retoma com a conferência de abertura, com uma convidada internacional, a pesquisadora Irene Faber. Até mais, pessoal. Perdão, gostaria de iniciar agora a nossa cerimônia a nossa conferência de abertura, apresentando a nossa convidada, a pesquisadora Irene Faber. Irene, just a brief introduction in Portuguese.
Okay, thank you very much to be here. I'm very, very honored, and I have made a presentation which is on video, which I hope will not provide any problems for the online streaming. And after that, I'm happy to answer all your questions and all the discussion that is possible.
Thank you, Irene. I would like to thank you again for accepting our invitation. It's an honor for us. And now the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Teresa. Thank you for being here. I think it's good to start up the video and have a discussion afterwards.
Oh.
First of all, I would like to thank the organizers of this Congress for inviting me for this opening ceremony and being the first speaker of this Congress. I hope you have an inspiring 2 days and I can be of added value to that, starting with the presentation Fulfilling Potential in Racket Sports Towards a Thrifty and Sustainable Talent Approach. Bom dia. Before I continue, I would like to introduce myself shortly. Hi, I'm Irene Faber. I started as a physical therapist in the beginning of 2000. And it was about in the same time frame when I started as a table tennis trainer. After that, I completed my study movement science and got interested in the field of motor development in young children. First, I worked with children that had difficulties with moving. And after a while, this transferred to work with children that were on the highest level compared to their peers. This eventually led to my dissertation about the search for high potential in youth table tennis players. Currently, I'm working as a postdoc at the University of Oldenburg in Germany. And in addition to that, I'm evaluated as a volunteer to the Scientific and Medical Committee of the International Table Tennis Federation, the board of the Netherlands Table Tennis Association, and the board of the Dutch Trainers Association. In the University of Oldenburg in Germany, we work with a team within the field of talent in sports. The professor of our group is Jörg Scheur. My fellow senior colleague is Florian Luffing, and at the moment we have 3 PhDs working on the field of talent in sports. Today I will try to guide you through part of my work and the vision that I share with a group of colleagues about how to fulfill the potential in racket sports. For this I have prepared 2 parts. First, I would like to introduce you to the topic by answering a couple of questions. Second, I will show you the work that we did to support practice within our scientific approach. So the first part is all about the questions. Why should we fulfill our potential? What exactly do we mean with this? When and where can we do that? And finally, how can we do this? The first question, why do you want to fulfill the potential of racket sports? Actually, this is maybe the most important question because it brings us to the core of why it is so important or essential to work in this field. It provides us the direction for our ambitions, our vision, and also our strategies. If we look a bit broader to what sports brings to society, this question is perhaps not so hard to answer. The Dutch Olympic Committee and the Sports Federation promote sport by sending out a message: we win a lot through sport. They say that sport is important and has an impact on society. Sport has a positive contribution on health and well-being, social cohesion, education, norms and values, economy and innovations. And for that reason, sport is linked to the current societies, and investments in sport can constructively lead to nations' welfare and well-being. And as Nelson Mandela almost poetically described, sport has the power to change the world. It has the power to inspire. It has the power to unite people in a way that little else does. It speaks to youth in a language they understand. And for that reason, sport seems to go beyond any borders. And if I reflect on what is happening in racket sports right now, then I see that we indeed add to health and well-being by stimulating, guiding and supporting many people to join in. We add to the society by spreading our sports culture, raising kids in the clubs, adding to our social values and norms. We educate people regarding their physical skills, but also mentally. Sports participation provides lesson for life. Our club life adds to the social cohesion. And our regular sports participation and perhaps also specifically the bigger events have large economical impacts on society. We are innovative to keep our sport attractive for life and see the possibilities to support societal questions, making, among others, more inclusive sports. So, I would say, yes, we can. Our sports have added value, and it's worth to invest in those willing to join us. Then the what question. What is fulfilling potential? And so maybe this quote describes exactly what it should be. To become all you can be. In sports, and racket sports, this generally reflects to 2 important pillars. The first one being sport participation, having an inclusive sport and making new friends. And elite sports, aiming for the highest level. Both pillars are important within your sport and interact with each other. Then the question, when and where can we fulfill our potential? Many trainers or sports federations and sports clubs have integrated a pathway to recreational and/or elite sports, a sort of roadmap how to get there. The long-term athlete development model of Balyi is an example of this and internationally recognized. It describes the different phases within sports across lifespan. Children should have an active start, build up their fundamentals, and learn to train. After that, a period that focuses on further development of your skills and competition to finally reach your potential skill level and stay active for life. The age of the different periods can slightly differ between sports, depending on whether the sport is considered an early, middle, or late specialization sport. If sensitive or critical training periods should be used when you are aiming for the highest level, it's obvious that you need to be able to fill in the necessary activities in that period. The most common context in which we can reach our players or potential players will be at schools, clubs, and at the association, depending, of course, what phase the players are in at that point in time. Then the final question, how can we fulfill the potential of our sports? To my opinion, we need to develop a thrifty and sustainable talent approach if we want to fulfill the full potential. My dear colleague Johan Pion from the Han University in the Netherlands has proposed these phases to come to a developmental approach and support children through the different phases. The first phase is talent detection, meaning that we look at children or even adults that do not participate in a certain sport and try to find the sport that fits them best. The second phase is about talent orientation, trying more sports to see what would be the best fit for you. Talent identification, the third phase, is about who participate already in the sport and find in that group those that can be the new elites. Talent development, although you could even say that this underlies or covers all parts, is about how to develop and guide players to fulfill their full potential, getting the best out of them. Talent selection refers to the selection of players or a team that will perform best at an important event, about winning medals, being on podia. And finally, talent transfer is about whether you could transfer to another sport. Would you make a better or even a perfect fit in another sport? For the elite level, this might be really difficult in our sports, the racket sports. But there are examples in other sports that show that this worked out very well. Although the arrow and the blocks suggest that the phases are chronologically ordered and have a clear start and end point, to my opinion, it's better to see this model a little bit more fluidly. So, if we take Pion's model, also integrate this with the long-term athlete developmental model of Balyi, you can get an idea of what could be done in a certain period to build up your talent program. You also can see that more context can be involved and be part of the solution. As a consequence, in our collaborative group, we try to build up an ecosystem together to support a thrifty and sustainable talent approach. This means that we need to make sure that the potential of our players and potential players should be explored and developed. This is crucial to fulfill the potential of our racket sports. For this, a cooperation between different stakeholders dealing with sports would provide most benefits. Schools, municipalities, clubs and federations all deal with the development of players, generally starting in the school. However, it's often felt that there is a discrepancy regarding the targets of the stakeholders. Schools and municipalities often put the child's development on the first place, where clubs and federations want their players to perform. However, if we all would go for an approach for talent development, then we will see that performance will come as well. It doesn't mean that the road isn't challenging or bumpy. In every phase, it's a bit like diagnostics. We have an idea of what will work and what not, but the outcome can be different. So if we look a little bit closer, we have true positives and true negatives. These reflect to children that are actually at the right spot. The ones that fit the profile are in, and the ones that fit another profile are out. However, we always have some children that are overlooked or missed, or didn't reveal that they have a good fit to badminton or any of the other racket sports. And we have children that are in, but are likely to drop out in future, because there's not really a match. So we are dealing with talent waste and investment lost. And we often do not have a system that recycles, supporting children in finding another sport, or dropouts or misfits of other sports, getting them in again. Among others, talent detection, orientation, talent transfer could be a solution for that. Here ends the first part. To summarize, think about why it's important to fulfill your potential, to set a direction in your vision and your strategies. You should think about what is actually reaching the full potential. And when and where should you do this? And can we come up with a thrifty and sustainable talent approach? And I believe that we can, and that science can be of support of this. So for the second part, I will introduce you some of the work that was done to support practice. So if we again take Pion's model for a talent approach, and we think about building up an ecosystem and reducing talent loss and talent waste. And think about all the phases that are in the model. Then actually we can get to the different blocks, the different phases, and try to support there for practice. As a first step, I will elaborate on research that has been conducted to improve talent detection, helping children that do not participate in sports finding a sport that fits them. If you look on the pictures on this sheet, you see children playing at the playground, exploring their physical abilities. Some might dream of becoming a gymnast, a tennis player, a soccer or badminton player, or even a master in the trampoline jumping. There are many sports out there, and it's not always easy to find a good fit. Therefore, we believed that all children could benefit from an instrument which assesses a child's fundamental movement skills. Such an instrument would provide opportunities for professionals working with young children in the context of sports and physical education, to have a more objective understanding of children's skills, better meet children's developmental demands, analyze the effectiveness of their interventions, and guide children to sports that fit them. So a study was conducted while evaluating a motor assessment battery on the ability to assess a broad spectrum of motor skills, from low to high performance. The test item covers locomotion and balance by including the items walking backwards, jumping sideways, moving sideways from the KTK3 test. Also an eye-hand coordination test was included to be able to assess object control. It was found that this assessment indeed could measure what it should be measuring and cover a broad spectrum within young children. Other studies on this measurement showed that these tests can help distinguish between sport profiles and even can contribute to prediction of future success in certain sports. Another study was conducted for talent detection in table tennis. Again, the need of a good talent detection was pointed out to support lifelong sports participation, reduce dropouts, and stimulate sports at the elite level. In this study, we tried to see whether a motor skills assessment battery used for talent identification in table tennis players was also suitable as an instrument for talent detection. This time the Dutch assessment was used, including 8 test items, examining gross motor function and ball control. The study was conducted in a primary school, as part of the physical education classes. It was found that almost 30% of the primary school children presented the perceptual motor qualities to keep up with the young talented table tennis players to which they were compared. Based on the outcomes, they seemed to make a good fit to table tennis regarding their motor profile. Specifically, the items assessing ball control contributed to the talent detection for table tennis of primary school children. Another part of our studies focused on talent identification. Here, it was the purpose to find those children that have the potential to become elite players, since table tennis is considered an early starting sport, and it is believed that certain critical periods for learning and specific techniques should optimally be used when aiming for the elites. All studies focused on children till the age of 10 or 12 years old. During my PhD process, I focused mainly on the question whether we can find those diamonds in the rough and how to estimate potential of such young players. With this work, 2 development or talent models were very helpful to me. First, Gagnier's model, differentiated model of giftedness and talent. Gagnier describes that natural abilities or gifts need to be developed into talented or competences. During the developmental process, there are environmental and interpersonal factors that can support or hinder the process. Also, the challenge factors included and plays a role concerning the whole process. The second model, Newell's dynamic system theory, describes that development takes place within or due to the interaction between the task, the environment, and the individual person. In our case, this means the task, what is the sport about? The environment, think of the family, peers, trainers, club and association, and the developing player. All elements change over time, which makes it a true dynamic process. I take this model to structure the coming studies regarding talent identification. So, in our research, we take into account that we need to analyze the task, not only how it looks now, but also how it develops over time. We take into account a player with his or her multidimensional characteristics and the environment. Regarding the analysis of the task, there are several perspectives that can be used. This is an example of how table tennis can be described. Typical for table tennis is that it's one of the fastest sports and players need to make quick and responsive adaptations to continuously changing conditions. All aspects that are necessary at the elite level and to reach the elite level can be considered in this way. Another perspective that can be used is to use match analysis. One of my colleagues used the characteristics of the match to better describe what the task is about and find the critical factors within a match. However, as already mentioned, it's important not to only think about the current situations, but about how the sport evolves over time. Think about changes in rules, about new technical and tactical solutions players that invent, perhaps about new materials that can be used, perhaps even about a whole new racket sport. Considering the individual, the player, we try to profile the players using a multidimensional approach. This means attention is paid to more aspects. It's not only about motor skills, but you try to estimate potential by including more performance determining factors. Research supports this by identifying critical traits, determinants for future performance, and by developing tools that can objectify these traits. Tests that should be reproducible, be able to discriminate between levels, predict future performance, and/or the risk of injuries. For this, a diversity of research methods is used, including both the qualitative and the quantitative research approaches. The next slide will show you a part of this. Identifying critical traits. We undertook a systematic review to search for the personal talent characteristics and ways to assess them. We found studies focusing on both the natural abilities and the interpersonal catalysts as Kanye described them. Essential determinants in racket sports that could be recognized from literature were intellectual and perceptual abilities, coordinative perceptual motor skills, and mental and goal management skills. However, there is a lack of longitudinal studies, which precludes a conclusion about the predictive value. From a coach survey, it became clear that eye-hand coordination, agility, and ball skills are highly important for racket sports. An observational study over time revealed psychological factors have a prognostic relevance for future participation and success in table tennis. Also, studies on injuries are useful when thinking about a thrifty talent approach. Aline van der Sluis and her group discovered that self-regulatory skills seem to be related to the development and prevention of overuse injuries in talented tennis players. And finally, some researchers focused on the cognitive aspects of the sport task. They tried to find out whether their athletes have superior cognitive skills that can explain their successes. It seems that the capacity to inhibit responses and some other metacognitive functions are related to high performance in racket sports. Covering more critical factors will support the profiling of youth players for actually both the intention of talent identification and monitoring of players during development. Regarding talent identification, a big gap in research is that most studies undertaken are cross-sectional and take notice of only one factor at a time. However, pilot studies are already conducted to make change and collect helpful data for future talent approaches. However, other questions are still not solved either. How to deal with the short-term versus long-term perspective. How to deal with the unique profiles. Who's the best to select? And the last one, how to deal with the differences in growth and maturation. Finally, as said previously, for talent identification, it's also important to take notice of the environment. Qualitative studies unraveled some important aspects that should be considered, not only for talent identification, but also for development. These are early exposure, deliberate play, taking the next step, constant competition, and the training and quality and quantity. Another environmental factor discovered in many sports is the risk for relative age effects. If we look a little bit further on this aspect, we see that a typical relative age effect refers to the trend that talented or elite players are more likely to be born in the first quartile after the cut-off date for an age group in a sport. Studies in table tennis revealed that table tennis is at risk for this effect, especially at the younger ages. Also in other racket sports, the relative age effect has been recognized. This is a kind of bias that can occur within a sport. It can produce false negative and false positive outcomes in the talent identification process. For that reason, it should be discovered and explored how one can prevent the bias identification process. Also, other kinds of bias can occur. You can think of the influence of training on the estimation of potential in young children. Studies trying to discover and focus on solution how to prevent such bias are recommended for a thrifty talent approach. So important for good talent identification is to know the task, being able to measure critical personal performance determinants, take into account the environmental factors that might bias the results. The next slide provides you a look over the fence how we try to support the Dutch head coach handling the talent identification process in the Table Tennis Association. We came with a strategy together with the coach using a questionnaire, the coach's eye, testing and performance indicators. In the questionnaire, we asked for the personalia, table tennis data, sports history, table tennis milestones, training history, and the current situation. This questionnaire was based on the developmental history of athletes questionnaire from Hopwood. The coach's eye meant that we asked expert coaches to determine whether children scored average to elite level on technical skills, on their mental behavior, and on their training behavior and learning ability. In the meanwhile, we're working for a tool that can actually measure technique in a better way. For the testing, we took two strategies. One is the general motor skills, and the second is the sport-specific motor skills. The general motor skills, you will recognize them, are the KTK3 test and the eye-hand coordination test. The outcome of these results provides a profile on the fundamental movement skills of the children. Then the sport-specific motor skills are the ones that were selected from the assessment of the Dutch Table Tennis Association. This included both the gross motor function and the ball control items. Together, this gives a profile about the specific, sport-specific and general motor abilities. Finally, performance was taken into account by taking the ELO rating. This is a performance score that is used for all competitions in the Netherlands. The next phase is talent development. For talent development, we try to identify aspects that hinder or encourage development. For that, we try to unravel the road to excellence. We explored methods in the educational domain that might be useful for sports. And we conducted intervention studies evaluating whether we can support skill development. And the final block, the final phase, is talent transfer. Also here some studies were conducted already. As a first exploration, how to use talent transfer, we did not only look at the typical project approach in which players transfer to another sport. We specifically looked to the process approach, in which we search for donor sports to support talent development of our players, to, among others, become more complete athletes and overcome injuries or burnout symptoms. So the second part of this presentation showed you how research can add to the different phases of the talent approach, focusing on talent detection, talent identification, talent development, and talent transfer. So, fulfilling potential in racket sports. I showed you why, what, when, where, and how to do that. And I showed you how science can be support of this approach. Thank you very much for your interest and listening to this presentation. I'm really open for discussion and answering your questions. I would say fire away.
Irene, I would like to thank you for the presentation. It was excellent. And I would like to introduce Karina to you and to the public. She's here to be our translator in the question and answer section. Karina?
Uhum.
Então, a nossa primeira pergunta para a Irene é: qual a maior dificuldade que ela encontra na região dela para a massificação do esporte?
Hi, Irene. What is the biggest difficulty that you find in your region for the massification of your sport?
Yes, thank you for that interesting question. I think it's not so easy to get more players on board always. And to my experience, that has most to do with the image of your sport. To me, that's table tennis. Table tennis is often not seen as a really popular sports like soccer or other sports. And of course, there's a lot of competition between sports. I think that's one part. Maybe, Karin, you can first translate that part.
Para a Irene, o mais importante é a imagem do esporte dela, né, que é o tênis de raquete, porque ele não é tão popular quanto o futebol, por exemplo. Então, para ela, essa parte é a mais importante. Second part?
Yeah, thank you. Okay, in the second part, I think it's a lot about the qualifications of our trainers and the education of our trainers. I think what I see all around is that we have a lot of volunteers working with the young children. And of course, that is really, really great, that is support in clubs. However, what I also see is that they are often not that well educated to really get in touch and be a good trainer and coach for the children. And although they're really willing to help and support, it's not always the best pedagogical approach. So I would say that more education for trainers is often needed to have better retainment of the children within our clubs.
Bom, para a Irene também é muito importante que as pessoas que treinam essas crianças tenham qualificação, porque eles têm muitos voluntários, tem muitas pessoas que querem ensinar essas crianças, porém falta um pouco de treinamento para que essas pessoas ensinem melhor as crianças e elas comecem a ter um pouco mais de prática e saibam melhor.
Okay, maybe the last thing to add here is that we have seen that it is possible to get more kids in the clubs and have a good retainment. And especially where you see it is when we have a good cooperation between the clubs and the municipalities and the schools. Then it seems to be easier to get your kids within the clubs. And it's very important that you organize your man or women power within the club, that it's sufficient to really provide the common children the care that they need and that they really retain in the club.
E para finalizar, ela diz que tem que ter uma cooperação entre os clubes e as cidades, as prefeituras, para que tenha uma organização para acomodar essas crianças para que elas consigam se desenvolver. Então, elas começam, mas que elas precisam se desenvolver melhor com a organização dos clubes e das prefeituras.
Perfeito. Vamos para a segunda questão, então. Irene, você acredita que um projeto multiesporte pode facilitar a detecção de futuros talentos?
Irene, do you believe that a multi-sport project can facilitate detecting future talents?
Yes, I really think that it supports the better solutions for selecting players for certain stages and the developmental part. Can make a more fair and objective evaluation of your players. However, it never is easy to really predict, and a high prediction rate is never expected.
Okay. A melhor solução seria em como você conseguir identificar esses talentos, separar quem seria um novo talento e quem não seria.
And in addition to that, I think that my dear colleague Johan Pion here already showed that in different sports it was possible to really predict the high-level players and even the medal, the ones that actually become a medal, and that they had better results from the evidence that was made within their research than if you compared it to the coach's eye alone. And other scientists also showed that maybe even a combination of the coach's eye and the scientific outcomes might be the best solution here.
O colega dela, que também fez as pesquisas, ela disse que isso ajuda muito mais do que os coaches, que os próprios treinadores, em identificar esses talentos. Com as pesquisas científicas e seguindo as réguas que ela mostrou durante o vídeo, fica muito mais fácil do que os próprios treinadores fazerem essa seleção dos talentos.
Perfeito, vamos para a questão 3. Como você vê ou o que você pensa sobre o atual cenário de estudos em esportes de raquetes?
Irene, what do you think, what's your opinion about the current scenario of the studies about racket sports?
Okay, that's a really large, broad question to answer. However, I think that it's most important if you look to the different approaches that we have evidence-based practice and on the other way to look to practice-based evidence, which means that it's really important that within science we try to cooperate with those working in practice and vice versa. So there's really a loop going on, having feedback to each other. What is happening in practice? Can we support that from the scientific way? And otherwise, the other way around, can we as scientists, when we have questions, can practice support us to help and get the answers, and so we can continue with our work? So I think that is most important, whatever question you actually want to answer together.
Para a Irene, isso é uma pergunta muito extensa e muito importante, porque para ela tem que ser uma constante troca de informação entre estudos de campo, entre o que as pessoas estão fazendo nos treinamentos e as pesquisas científicas. Então, o tempo inteiro eles têm que ficar trocando informação para tentar evoluir nesse aspecto.
É uma pergunta que tem a ver com a anterior. Na sua opinião, quais áreas dentro dos esportes de raquetes precisam ser mais desenvolvidas?
This question is kind of related to the last one. In your opinion, which areas of racket sports needs to be developed?
Or more developed?
Or more developed, yeah.
Yeah, thank you for your question. I think if you, that probably depends on also what kind of racket sport you are in right now, because I know that some new racket sports came up, like paddle is not that long-term already. But if I look in my sports in table tennis, what I think is really important that we get a higher mass participation, especially in the Western of Europe, where I'm in right now, and getting more children involved in our sport, really handling them in a better way. That would really be a direction that I think would be beneficial. And then maybe even specifically on the girls and women. Because what we see in our sport is that we only have like 15 or 16% that is girl or female players, and I think that there's a lot of things that we can win there. So how can we get them in? How can we develop them in a better way? Well, how can we attract them to our sports? And then we can have a look to all the outcomes that I mentioned in the beginning, like is it on health, or is it more on pursuit of excellence, or is it more on this kind of outcomes as well? So that is one direction, and I would say that in every racket sport, this might also always be an important item. Mainly reason for that is we have more competitions with the other sports. So how can we actually get the people in our sport? How can we attract them? How can we develop our sport? And that can even be broader than only looking at the players themselves, but for example, also about how we organize our sports. I hope it's not too long, Karen, for translation.
Segundo a Irene, depende muito do esporte de raquete, porque existem várias modalidades. Ela, especificamente falando do tênis de mesa, ela fala da emancipação em relação a esse esporte, e no caso dela, ela pesquisa muito sobre as mulheres que jogam tênis de mesa, que na região dela da Europa, em torno de 15% a 16% das mulheres, né, participam dos jogos, mas ela gostaria de saber mais sobre por que as mulheres decidem jogar o tênis de mesa na região dela, se é por causa de saúde, se elas querem competir, se elas querem evoluir na área. E para ela seria importante também que houvessem mais competições de tênis de mesa, como existem de outras áreas do esporte de raquete. Mais jogadores, mais incentivo, para ela seria bem importante essa área também.
Perfeito, e é algo que a gente vem buscando aqui no Brasil também. Se puder traduzir, Karina, aí eu já vou passar para a próxima pergunta. A gente fez, inclusive, um fórum essa semana com essa temática.
Dr. Thaisa says that that's a very important part for Brazilian research as well. You know, that part that you just said. About
Thank you very much.
E a próxima pergunta, então, uma pergunta específica sobre tênis de mesa. Quando você acredita que é o melhor período para aplicar testes para crianças e por quê? E se existe diferenças de teste dependendo do local de prática e dos objetivos.
Now, there's a specific question about table tennis. When do you believe is the best period to apply tests to kids, and why? And is there a difference between tests depending on where to practice and their objectives? So the first question is the best period to apply tests to kids and why?
Yeah, depends on what kind of phase you're actually in. As I showed you in the beginning, we have the talent detection part, the talent identification part, more the talent development part, and so on. So depending on the phase, you probably need different kind of tests. Within the talent detection part, it can be really helpful to have a sort of motor profile and looking what I like of the kids is. But that might be even broader than only your sports table tennis, but it might be a sort of cooperation between schools and sports club to get the children to a place that fits them, both regarding their motor skills and also what they actually like to do. So I think that's the first part. I will continue.
Então, como ela falou aqui na palestra, depende muito da fase, da idade da criança, para que ela possa aplicar o teste específico. E que é muito mais abrangente, porque no caso da criança, em companhia das escolas, né, seria um trabalho com as escolas, para abranger quais esportes, não somente esportes de raquete, mas quais esportes essas crianças poderiam desenvolver. Então tem que ser um trabalho mais abrangente, e aí você especificando se a criança vai para esporte de raquete ou não. The second part would be, is there a difference between tests depending on where to practice and their objectives?
Yeah, I'd like to add something more on the answer that I did on the first question first.
Okay.
That is that for this talent detection, we often use primary school age for that. So it's until the age of 10 or 12, more or less. And for talent identification, we use a little bit more specific table tennis tasks, and we often get a better profile on what their training history is. But these are often kids that already play quite a long time table tennis already, and that is at the age of approximately 12 years old, talent identification. After that, it's kind of hard to get in if you're not already in the sports yet, to really go for the elite level. Then for the talent developmental part, we often use that not really to select them anymore, but it's more to monitor players over time. And then for selection, what I see right now is that they mainly are based on expectations of the coaches, how they will perform during events, based on for example, their competition rating, their tournament ratings, and also about what they see in their training level, etc.
Ela ainda respondeu um pouquinho sobre a outra pergunta, que costuma ser na idade do ensino primário, quando as crianças estão com 10 a 12 anos, que eles começam a fazer essa identificação. Mas no caso de esportes de raquete, é um pouco mais específico. As crianças, de costume, elas já jogam, então não é que elas vão começar a desenvolver. Elas já têm um histórico, elas já jogam antes, e aí é identificado e elas começam a treinar para a área de elite do esporte, mas elas já tinham algum tipo de conhecimento. E ela fala também sobre a seleção para essas pessoas, para esses talentos, vem dos treinadores, que aí, conforme eles vão treinando, eles vão identificando, pontuando, vendo quem se destaca, e aí sim as crianças são selecionadas, não tem outra maneira. The second part? Yeah. Okay. Do you want me to ask again? Is there a difference between tests depending on where to practice and their objectives?
Yeah, I think what we always try to do is to get tests that are doable or feasible in every club that there are, or every school that we actually want to do it. What's kind of important is if you do the test, then try to do it in the most standardized way as possible, because then you get fair data. And as said, I think we try to develop tests that were suitable to everybody on the whole world, wherever you're be. If you have like table tennis balls and a sort of gymnastic hall, it can be doable.
Ok. Para a Irene, eles tentam fazer testes que são padronizados em todos os clubes, em todas as escolas, e para ela é muito importante que esses testes sejam padronizados para o mundo inteiro. Então, em qualquer lugar que você aplique, você consiga ter os resultados para desenvolvimento dessas pessoas. I think that's all for 5.
Próxima questão. Irene, nas escolas do Brasil, tem muita prática de badminton enquanto esporte de raquete, por conta de condições estruturais, materiais e conhecimentos dos professores que atuam. Como você pensa em desenvolver os esportes para além de drills e coordenação motora?
In the schools in Brazil, the most played racket sports badminton because of the structural conditions, the materials, and the teacher's knowledge. In your opinion, what can be done about developing the sports for more than drills and motor coordination?
Okay, what we really took as an important part regarding table tennis is also, or actually guiding children within their career, is that on the mental side, they also have like developing self-regulative skills, which means that they are more capable of dealing or managing their own developmental process. So besides all the things that we need to do on the physical part and the motor part, and etc., I think it's really important that these children also become the owner of their own career development. And that goes step by step from the very beginning. So it's not only doing the motor drills, the table tennis drills, but also guiding them more as an individual, as a person that develops, and trying to get them supportive on their career development.
Ok. Para ela é importante que não somente esses esportes sejam aplicados para o desenvolvimento motor, físico, mas que essas crianças sejam guiadas para que elas também tenham ciência do esporte, para que elas queiram desenvolver e para que elas consigam. Então, não é só usar o esporte como um desenvolvimento motor, mas que elas entendam que existe esse esporte e que elas podem desenvolvê-lo se elas quiserem.
Perfeito. Próxima pergunta aqui,
Okay.
trazendo para a gente se a Irene acredita que o desenvolvimento tecnológico pode ajudar.
Pode impulsionar, acho que impulsionar.
O uso de tecnologias. Perfeito, obrigada. Considera que o uso de tecnologias um fator que pode afastar as crianças e jovens do esporte como um todo. Acho que é a questão do uso de telas, de jogos. Perfeito, obrigada, pessoal.
Irene, do you think the technological development, like screens, tablets, cell phones, is pushing kids and teenagers away from sports? I think you're on mute.
It's a good question. I totally agree that all the kids have phones. It's so attractive to them to use their phones and their tablets and actually not go play outside anymore. It's a big issue. I think at least in the Netherlands it is, and I know it's in Germany as well. So we really have to deal with it. And on the other hand, technical solutions also provide some opportunities maybe that we can use within our gymnastic halls and in our table tennis trainings, because how cool is it if you can actually take a video clip of yourself and see you playing and maybe even get some feedback on that and improving your playing skills. So I think we should be more creative using this kind of tools instead of trying to avoid them, because it is around, and I think we better use it in a better way that we can do and help our children than to really neglect whether that it's not there or even prevent them to take it with them or whatever.
A Irene acha essa uma boa pergunta, porque na Alemanha também seria um problema que as crianças também ficam muito com celulares, computadores e não saem para brincar, mas ela vê como uma oportunidade de usar essas tecnologias para incentivar as crianças, como, por exemplo, o quão legal seria uma criança se filmar jogando e ter esse feedback das redes sociais. Então ela vê mais como usar a criatividade para usar ao invés de proibir o uso. Então você usa a tecnologia para ajudar a criança a se motivar no esporte.
Perfeito. E a próxima pergunta aqui qual idade você pensa que é a melhor para iniciar os esportes de raquetes na escola? E como potencializar o desenvolvimento de atletas que não são talentos natos?
Okay. Which age, Irene, do you think is the best to start racket sports at school? And how can we potentialize the development of athletes that are not natural talents?
Okay, first the first part. If you're at schools, I think that you can really start already at an early age, depending on what you actually offer to them. It would be really great if we have some fundamentals that can be trained or learned already at an early age, like from the age of 5 till 7 or 8 years old. And then after that, we can go a little bit more specific on our racket sports. And of course, it always depends on the skill level of the child as well. But there are possibilities already start at an early age. And there are several programs out there. For example, if you look at the French Federation in table tennis, they have baby ping. And in the Netherlands, for example, we have Table Stars, which really focuses already on the early age. But it's a sort of different program, not typically a table tennis training, but it's more doing all kind of exercises related to table tennis and other racket sports, having better eye-hand coordination skills, ball control skills, learning how to deal with an elongated arm, whatever racket that might be. So that can be really helpful already at an early stage.
Uhum. A primeira pergunta, ela diz que pode começar cedo, dependendo da oferta, mas que de 5 a 7, 8 anos já seria interessante começar, e aí mais especificamente com o tênis de mesa, dependendo da habilidade que a criança desenvolver e mostrar. E ela cita como exemplo a Federação Francesa e a holandesa, que eles têm opções de baby tênis, ou seja, crianças bem pequenas já começam a praticar, e conforme elas vão desenvolvendo, elas vão crescendo na área, mas que é possível sim desde uma idade bem pequena, crianças bem pequenas. The second part would be how can we potentialize the development of athletes that are not natural talents?
Yeah, it's a good question. The first thing is that I think within the talent detection system that I see for how it could be developed is that actually we try to find those who fit the sports best. But of course, within that group, you don't have all elite players or the ones that really reach the potential. And even in that, I think it's very good to have all kind of levels within your association. So we have a sort of broad recreational field, and also these kids should be helped and should be guided within our sports. And perhaps not completely in the same way as we do with the elite, but on the other hand, in the beginning, we really need to take care of them as well and try to teach them in the best way as well. What we often see, what I see in my own club when I give training, that also the one that are on a lower level, they really like to learn and they make maybe smaller steps, but being there as a trainer and guide them to actually improve their skills, that is something that really gets them also the feeling of success, and which has a positive contribution on their development anyways.
Okay. Para Irene é importante que todos os jogadores sejam motivados, mesmo que não sejam jogadores de elite, que é muito importante que nas confederações tenham jogadores de todos os níveis, e é legal que você preste atenção, tenha uma atenção especial com eles também, não desmotive, porque quando ela treina na associação dela, ela gosta muito de ver esses jogadores com níveis mais baixos, porque eles também têm muita motivação, eles querem muito aprender, mesmo que sejam aos poucos, em passos pequenos, mas ainda assim, eles querem aprender e é importante motivá-los também.
Perfeito. E, de repente, a gente vai encontrá-los como talentos mais adiante, né? Pode traduzir?
Yeah, and according to Thaisa, even those players who are not natural talents, they can become natural talents in the future if you push them, if you motivate them, right?
Okay, if you really speak about natural talent, like talent is kind of a hard definition. It's always difficult to really have a good consensus about what talent actually is. And of course, depending on, you can become really on a higher level. That counts for everybody. So everybody can develop in our own sports. And of course, how much you actually want to get or what you want to put in the sports is also related to what skill level you will reach in the end. On the other hand, what I see right now within our, especially in table tennis, but I think it's also accounted in tennis, they're so professionalized sports. So if you don't have a certain X factor, some uniqueness, then it will be really hard to get on the highest level of the world. So I truly think that you need to bring a little bit more than only training to really reach the final part. On the other hand, I also know that it comes in the interaction with each other. So of course, if you're really young and you start already at a really early age and you're really creative parents, for example, or a trainer that really guides you and explores with you all kind of possibilities, it's so hard to tell whether that's something that you got because you're born with that or something that has been taught to you. So it's kind of difficult to say a nature-nurture discussion that remains. Actually, it would be the combination. It's really difficult to really decide, okay, that's really nature and that's really nurture.
Okay. Para ela é muito difícil de definir o que seria um talento nato. Porque você pode desenvolver, você pode treinar, mas por outro lado, nos esportes profissionais, os jogadores eles apresentam algo a mais, além do treino, da parte técnica. Então, para ela é muito difícil responder isso, porque tem que ser a combinação dos dois, nature e nurture. Então, você tem que treinar, mas tem que vir algo de dentro de você também. Não somente treino, treino, treino.
Perfeito, obrigada. Vamos para a próxima, então. No caso de esportes com dificuldade para formar novos jogadores, a detecção e orientação de talentos deve ser um projeto a curto ou longo prazo?
When we're talking about sports, they have a hard time with developing new athletes. The talent detection and orientation should be a short or a long-term design project?
That's a good question as well, because depending on what you're actually looking at, if you look at the whole talent developmental phase, that's really a long-term issue in racket sports. I believe even in the 10,000 hour rule, because I think that our players invest even more than that to or to reach the elite level in the world. So if you look at the whole process, then it's really a long-term thing. But if you specifically look in the talent detection part and talent orientation part, and we really want to have children already at an early age starting with our sports, then at least table tennis, badminton, or other racket sports should be part of the first exploration already, should be part of that talent orientation phase. So because we need that early age or early stage actually to already build up some fundamental skills that they need for further development. So I won't say that it's not a long-term project. It can be shorter maybe, but only in these specific phases. And we need to have a long breath to, again, end up at the highest level.
Para ela, o treinamento do profissional que vai se tornar profissional de elite tem que ser feito num longo período, então orientação, mas é fundamental quando você vai detectar novos talentos que seja a curto prazo. A criança ela tem que estar jovem, ela tem que ser crianças mais jovens para que a detecção seja feita o mais rápido possível e elas comecem a treinar também o mais rápido possível, serem apresentadas aos esportes de raquete o mais rápido que puder.
Perfeito. E aí, potencialmente, o processo de desenvolvimento desse talento passa a ser em longo prazo, não é mesmo?
Potentially, in the short term, you have to detect the talents, and in the long term, you have to train, practice, develop them. That's what I mean, right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Mesmo.
Próxima pergunta. Gostaria de saber se a Irene conhece testes para avaliar alunos ou atletas com deficiência que praticam esportes de raquetes.
Irene, do you know any tests to evaluate students or athletes with physical disabilities who play racket sports?
Yeah, I know some of the tests, but it depends on what your aim is, what kind of thing you're actually looking at, which use best. We actually did some, the eye-hand coordination test, for example, we did that also with the Paralympic players. And we saw that the better they actually could perform the test, the easier was it to learn the technical part of table tennis as well. And I know that Debbie van Biesen, She is a Belgian researcher. She did a lot on testing the Paralympic players based on their skill level as well, to having a better idea on their technical level, and I think even on their tactical level as well. And I think that was mainly to have a better monitoring of development. But it might also be that it had something to do with qualifying what kind of qualification the player should have when competing in a certain class, actually.
Okay. And what's the name of the Belgian researcher that you said?
Debbie Van Biesen. I can put it in the chat if you
Okay, thank you. A Irene diz que depende do que você procura, né, nesse atleta, nesse aluno com algum problema. E para as Paralimpíadas existem esses testes. Inclusive tem uma pesquisadora belga que ela testou muitos atletas para as Paralimpíadas, e principalmente a parte técnica, para ver o nível de habilidade técnica, para monitorar o desenvolvimento e para classificar em qual nível esse para-atleta ficaria, para que ficasse justo para que ele competisse.
Perfeito. Nossa próxima pergunta. Irene, quais fatores considera serem os mais importantes para que o talento se mantenha no esporte até chegar ao alto rendimento, sem abandonar a modalidade antes disso?
Okay. What question is that? 11?
11.
Yeah, okay. Irene, how should we develop high-performance sports, knowing that in Brazil, for example, in most cases, table tennis is not included at schools and kids start playing only when they enroll in a club?
I know that this is
Acho que foi
problem. It's a big problem, not only in Brazil. I think this is a problem in the Netherlands and in Germany as well. This means that when children actually come in the clubs, that they have a sort of lack of development where you actually want to have them, especially if you're aiming for the elite level with them. So they have a sort of basics that are not there. And I think that is also in combination with iPads and iPhones or the tablets and everything, that they're not playing outside anymore enough to really develop the fundamental skills that they need. So what happens right now in the Netherlands is that we are trying to build up new projects to have better skilled children regarding their motor skills already. And we fight to get better physical education in schools again, because it was reduced on financial reasons to have less hours within a week, and we have even less quality of the teachers. Often there are students not finished their school yet, not people with many experiences. So that's on the one hand. On the other hand, clubs are also trying to get into schools more earlier already, showing table tennis, getting children more early in the club. So, and we're fighting against it from two sides, both from the school level, both from the club level. But I think this is really something, if we compare that to Asia, we really have a lack of support at the very beginning. I totally agree with that.
Okay. Ela concorda com a situação do Brasil, porque é parecido na Holanda e na Alemanha, onde não somente as crianças estão mais interessadas nas telas dos computadores, dos celulares, e elas não têm tanto desenvolvimento físico e motor, mas também por uma parte financeira, que as escolas elas precisam de mais apoio, para que os professores tenham mais treinamento, para que tenham mais aulas de educação física, que a carga horária de educação física costuma diminuir, né, ter menos horas, menos tempo de educação física. Então, essa parte precisa ser impulsionada. E também que os clubes queiram entrar nas escolas para começar a fazer a detecção, começar a treinar essas crianças e motivá-las para que elas conheçam o esporte desde pequenas. Então tem que ser uma combinação das duas, mas ela vê esse déficit também na Alemanha e na Holanda, em comparação, por exemplo, na Ásia, em que as crianças são bem impulsionadas a jogar esportes de raquete.
Perfeito, a gente teve uma troca de perguntas aqui. Eu vou voltar à pergunta, então.
Tá.
Quais fatores você considera serem os mais importantes para que o talento se mantenha no esporte até chegar ao alto rendimento, sem abandonar a modalidade antes?
Tá. Irene, which factors do you consider to be more important so the high talented athlete maintain themselves and become professionals without any type of burnout?
I think that in racket sports, I think the trajectory or pathway that players need to go can be kind of lonely and can be really like every day seems to be the same, like training drills that they need to do, etc. So I think it's very important that we really take care of our players within these phases, and that it's really about personality development. So I think as a coach, you really should look what your player actually needs to not go on a sideway, but stick on the highway.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that that coach relationship or trainer relationship is really important to have a good idea together about where we can work to, and to be inspiring each other actually to develop together to a higher level. And what I see as well is that I think it's good to have a better environment sometimes. Sometimes it's actually better to move to another club or to another training situation that you can really be inspired again. And especially within the training situation, they should be kind of having we call it the spirit of when you just started the sport, the funny things that you really liked, all the deliberate play that you're actually doing to get better. So all kind of funny games that is often, or challenges, which can be really fun to do. So I think it's and this is really takes a lot of energy from coaches and trainers as well. But I think that it's really worth the investment. You really need to invest as a coach, as a trainer, to get your player on the highway, and see that sometimes it's some other things that they need than the training drills.
Okay. Ela aponta que é um esporte que você tem que treinar muito sozinho e que a rotina pode ser meio desgastante, que todo dia parecer sempre o mesmo dia. Então, para ela é muito importante que o treinador tenha um bom relacionamento com o atleta e que eles tenham um foco para não sair da reta, não sair do foco principal, que é ser elite, mas que principalmente o ambiente tenha que ser agradável e que o atleta lembre de como era no princípio, do prazer de jogar, do prazer de treinar, e que isso está relacionado sempre ao treinador, para que ele impulsione, para que ele motive o atleta a não sair do trilho.
Perfeito. Vamos então para as nossas duas últimas perguntas, a pergunta 14 e a 15. Né? Então, a pergunta 14, Irene, como é o processo de formação de treinadores de esportes de raquetes na Alemanha?
Irene, how is the process of becoming a coach in racket sports in Germany?
In Germany, normally you have these trainer education programs. So you need to fulfill a sort of education to actually become a trainer. And you have different levels in there. I think there are 5 stages, as it is in the Netherlands as well. And then the highest stage being a national head coach, more or less. The one just below is more on the regional level. And then you have the level of the club trainers. And then below that, you have like assistant trainer. And even below that, there might be something as guiding young kids during their matches and their trainings, but not really being a trainer yourself. So there are different levels on that. And of course, it really helps if you have some experience from being a player yourself, putting that experience into practice.
Okay. Na Alemanha, normalmente, você tem que ter algum tipo de formação. E tem 5 estágios, 5 níveis que os treinadores costumam seguir, que seria primeiro guiar crianças para os treinamentos, depois assistente de treino, e depois treino e treino de elite, né, treinador de elite. E é interessante que talvez o treinador já tenha sido um esportista, que já tenha sido atleta para ele saber melhor, mas não é necessariamente obrigatório.
Perfeito. Nossa última questão, então,
Uhum.
Qual a sua opinião sobre o desenvolvimento de esportes de raquetes em contexto de participação, como projetos sociais, por exemplo?
What's your opinion on developing sports in social projects or in the context of participation in this kind of projects of social focus?
Yeah, what I see right now is that there is really a trend going on using sport as a sort of social, or actually to help social issues like social cohesion within societies, having, for example, fempowerment programs, etc. And I think that I mentioned it in the presentation as well, that sport has a sort of power to go beyond borders and to actually get something done that is like the challenges that we have in society, living together with each other, so many people all around the world. And I think that if sports can be used for that and can contribute to that, I would be happy to be part of that, to have a better society, to live together with nations in a more peaceful way. Yeah, I would really support that.
Ela acha muito importante usar esportes, não somente como exercício, mas também como uma conexão social. Ela fala na palestra que o esporte tem o poder de ir além, né? E que é muito importante para a convivência social, para as conexões, e ela acredita que pode, inclusive, contribuir entre uma boa relação entre nações, entre países, que o esporte poderia ser usado dessa maneira, além de ser só um exercício. Ela acredita que seria uma ótima função do esporte.
Perfeito, então, encerramos a parte de perguntas e respostas, e vou pedir uma ajuda também à Karina para a tradução final. Eu gostaria de agradecer imensamente a Irene. Como eu falei da cerimônia de abertura, o congresso estava planejado para ser presencial, e desde a primeira vez que a gente fez contato com a Irene, ela topou, ela concordou estar conosco, que nos traz muita felicidade, e quando passamos aí para online, isso se configurou de uma forma, né, possível pelo momento que estamos vivendo, mas gostaríamos de agradecer muito, sem dúvida, foi uma contribuição muito valorosa para o nosso congresso, e um grande prazer estar fazendo esse momento da conferência de abertura com ela.
So, Irene, we would like to thank you immensely because you accepted to be in this Congress since the beginning when it was supposed to be in presential. And even though we are going through this whole phase, we thank you. Thank you. It was a great contribution, all your expertise. And it was a pleasure to have you here. Okay.
Yeah, again, thanks for being here. It is really, really nice to see that so many people are actually joining this Congress and that so many people are interested to work in the field of racket sports and try to improve our sports. And I hope I inspired everybody with my presentation, continue on talent identification and development, because I think that if we care for all the pupils that are within our sports, then we have better sports in the end, for sure. Thank you very much.
ela está muito feliz com a presença, com o número de pessoas que assistiram a palestra, e ela espera inspirar todas as pessoas que assistiram para o desenvolvimento e que para mais pessoas se atraiam e queiram conhecer mais o esporte de raquete, ou no caso, o tênis de mesa que ela representa.
Muito obrigado. Então, com isso eu encerro essa parte da conferência de abertura para darmos sequência aqui com a programação do Congresso. Thank you so much, Irene. Voltamos, então, para o momento de transição, né? E fechamos, então, a conferência de abertura e vamos seguir já para salas de tema livre. Mas, antes disso, eu gostaria de compartilhar com vocês uma... muito obrigada. No nosso congresso, a gente tem o prazer de fazer um lançamento exclusivo de um livro que foi lançado essa semana, que compartilho a organização do livro com o professor João Guilherme Chiminazzo, um livro publicado pela editora Manoli, em que vocês vão estar tendo a oportunidade, ao longo de toda a programação do Congresso, de conhecer os autores que escreveram os capítulos para esse livro, né? Os autores vão estar atuando aí nos mais variados protagonismos ao longo do nosso evento e vão poder contar para vocês um pouquinho qual capítulo eles escreveram e um pouquinho mais do livro. E a novidade boa é que, por conta desse lançamento exclusivo, se você acessar por meio do QR Code ou desse código que aparece para vocês também, acessando diretamente a editora Manoli, vocês vão poder adquirir o livro ao longo de todo o evento com um cupom de desconto de 20%. Tá? Então, um grande prazer para a gente estar podendo lançar esse livro no evento. E, além disso, né, eu gostaria de falar para vocês também que a gente vai, amanhã, né, depois que houverem todas as salas de tema livre, e convido vocês também a acessarem o nosso site, que vocês podem ver na tela aqui na aba de pôster. Vocês podem estar observando todos os pôsteres que foram aceitos para a apresentação, tanto para relato de experiência, né, se vocês forem rolando a tela para baixo, vocês observam todos os pôsteres de relato de experiência, e na sequência, vocês vão poder observar também todos os pôsteres que foram aceitos, né? Olha aqui, como trabalhos científicos, né? Convido vocês a acessar o site, vocês têm acesso pelo canal do YouTube, aqui no link do site também, ou mesmo pelas nossas redes sociais, para vocês poderem analisar os pôsteres, tem e-mail dos autores lá, se vocês tiverem dúvidas, e mais do que isso, por meio de olhar os pôsteres e também de acompanhar nossas salas de tema livre, que eu já vou falar na sequência, eu convido vocês amanhã também, no início da tarde do domingo, a gente vai abrir um momento de votação, que é uma votação de menção honrosa de mérito público, que vocês vão ter a oportunidade de votar no trabalho que vocês consideram o melhor trabalho para pôster e para tema livre. Esses trabalhos também vão ser contemplados com uma menção honrosa, tá? E agora, na sequência, né, seguindo a programação do nosso evento, estamos bem no horário certinho, né? Convido vocês, então, a irem para as salas. de tema livre. A gente vai sair aqui do canal do YouTube e vai estar acessando as salas que está sendo compartilhada com vocês pelo chat do YouTube. Com temática, são 2 salas que vão acontecer agora de tema livre. Só conferir aqui. Uma sala sobre gestão esportiva e políticas públicas, que é a sala 1, e na sala 2, análise de jogo e avaliação aplicada aos esportes de raquetes. Então, vocês podem acessar diretamente as salas do Meet e assistirem aquelas que mais forem convidativas aí para vocês. E a gente volta com a programação aqui pelo YouTube, logo após o almoço, às 13 horas, ok? Vejo vocês daqui a pouco. Muito obrigada.